Hello, and welcome to this Rain Taxi virtual event featuring Victor Wooten. I'm Eric Lorber. I'm the director of Rain Taxi, and I'm delighted you could join us tonight. If you don't know about Rain Taxi, we are a nonprofit organization that champions all kinds of great writing being produced. We do this in a lot of ways, but the core of what we do is that we make a magazine every 3 months, and we have just released our 100th issue. We're really proud of this, and if you haven't been able to get a copy, we can mail it to you. Hop on over to our website anytime after this event, and we can set that up. Another way we serve literature is through author events, and many of them, like this one, are free to attend. If you're able to pitch in a little bit, we've got a virtual donation jar set up at the bottom of your screen. Feel free to pitch in. We're privileged to receive funding from the National Endowment for the Arts and the Minnesota State Arts Board, among others, but they'd be the first to say that our most vital supporters are always individuals like you. There are a lot of ways you can participate tonight. A lot of you are already chiming in on the chat. It's been great to see where you're all from and how excited you are. If you have a question for the authors tonight, you can put that in the Ask a Question box, and I'll be returning at the end with an assortment of those questions for Victor, so we'll get to some of those, I'm sure. But most importantly, if you want, you can buy the book using that button on your screen. Here it is, and it's a beauty. I know that there are plenty of places on the internet where you can buy books, but when you buy a book with us at an event, it's really meaningful. You're not only supporting the author, but you're supporting us as your host and a great independent bookstore here, Majors and Quinn. And that button will go right to the Spirit of Music page at the Majors and Quinn website. So don't hesitate to use it if you're interested. In fact, while you're there, buy other books if you like, because all of those purchases support us as well. It's such a pleasure to introduce Victor Wooten. I've been a fan of his music for quite a long time. As many of you know, with Bella Fleck and the Flecktones, he is the holder of 5 Grammy Awards. It's staggering. He's also the only person in the history of Bass Player magazine to win their readers poll more than once. And let's see, he's been named one of 50 iconic Black trailblazers by the Huffington Post, one of the 10 greatest bass players of all time by Rolling Stone magazine. But what a joy when someone so accomplished in another field writes a book, puts their thoughts into a book, because that just brings it to us in a new way that I just love. To talk with Victor tonight, we're so pleased to have Sean McPherson. Sean is renowned in these parts, here in Minnesota at least, and probably elsewhere, as a bass player himself in the hip-hop medium. He also lends his dulcet tones to the airwaves as a DJ for Minnesota Public Radio's The Current and elsewhere. He's one of the most enthusiastic people I know about music, so I'm just so excited to hear him talk about the spirit of music with Victor L. Wooten. Welcome to you both, and take it away, Sean.
Well, thank you so much. And I can tell you, Eric, after reading this book, I'm sure you're going to at least have to put me second in your list of enthusiasm about music, because the enthusiasm about music is really contagious in this book. So, Victor, first off, congratulations on completing your second book, The Spirit of Music.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
In reading the book, I took away that a lot of us might have a misunderstanding about what the value of being a teacher is, and then how teaching actually works can be commonly misunderstood. I see a lot in this book where the relationship between the teacher and the student is inverted or is not traditional, and the teacher walks away getting more than the student might at times like that. Can you talk a little bit about your philosophies about teaching and how it relates to this book?
First, I don't know that I have a philosophy. I do have lots of thoughts, and I don't claim to be right about any of them.
Gotcha.
It's just what I think, right? And I'm just one person, but I have thought about it a lot. And in many cases, not all cases, but in many cases, us teachers think that it's our job to fill the student with information. And there's some truth to that. But I think our bigger job is to draw information out of the person. And just to give one example, if a 10-year-old comes to me, like you have some young kids, right? Let's say a 10-year-old kid comes to me for guitar lessons, bass lessons, music lessons. I'm probably going, if I'm a normal teacher, I'm going to treat that child as if he doesn't know anything, and I got to teach him everything. The truth of the matter, if that kid is 10 years old, that means this child has been listening to music nearly 11 years.
Right.
And if their favorite song comes on, they'll learn that song faster than you. Right? So our job in most cases as a music teacher is to help them express their musicality through an instrument. That's probably something they've never done before. But we don't have to teach them music. They already know it. They have their version of it. And our job is to help enhance that, improve upon that, and help that grow through enjoyment, not through over criticism. And usually it's us teachers telling them how wrong they are, which of course they're beginners. They're going to be wrong more than they're right on an instrument. So if they hear how wrong they are so many times over and over, they'll quit really, really, really quickly. But if we show them that they're already musical and we build our curriculum around them, right, then you'll never lose a student. And they'll be the great student. They'll be the great musician that we know that they can be. The same way your two kids will be learning and speaking English without you having to really teach them.
It's a trip that you mentioned right at the end, the thing about speaking. When I spoke to Eric about doing this event, one reason I was really eager to do it is because growing up as an aspiring bass player, your bass player columns were essential reading, right? And I'm really excited to talk about this book. But you just mentioned something, and there was a sentence in one of your columns, we're probably talking 92, 93 or something like that, that stuck with me, that basically it was asking the merits of reading music and what you should do about people interacting with people who can't read music. Towards about the middle of the column, you said, would you ever rule out having a discussion with somebody because they couldn't read or write English? Absolutely not. You would recognize that this person was still a completely gifted communicator. They just didn't do the written word thing. And as I was a young bass player struggling to learn how to read music, it gave me this sense of all of your columns, frankly, gave me a sense of comfort and of musicality that I think a lot of people, because you have so much technical facility, a lot of people might think that your columns would have been the most like, here's your dotted 16th note and pull out these arpeggios. And it was quite the opposite. You imbued those columns with so much spirit and so much warmth I imagine you know the same thing. Coming up, it's easy to get cut down as a bass player, and your columns did the opposite thing. So beyond that, thank you, man. That was helpful.
I appreciate that, Sean. And here's the thing that us teachers need to learn. What you told me, right? You're talking about me,
right?
But you're telling me about you.
Yeah.
Right? You're telling me what you noticed, what you saw, right? So even though you're building me up, I take myself out of the equation because it's not about me. And this will sound egotistical. I already know I'm good. I already know I'm a good bass player, right? And that's not egotistical. It's just the truth.
Right.
Right? If you go to a doctor, you don't want the doctor to say, "Hey, are you a good doctor?" Well, I'm okay. I try. You want the doctor to have confidence. Yes, I'm competent. I know what I've done this a long time. You want that. But for some reason in the arts, we're not allowed to do that. I'm not afraid to do it. I'm good at what I do. But Sean, I'm no better than you.
Right.
Sean, if someone wants you to play bass on their record, I'm not good enough to be you. So even though I'm good, it's because I'm so good that I recognize. So when you're telling me all these beautiful things about me, it's telling me beautiful things about you. And that gives me a great place of where to start my lessons. if we were to do lessons. Yeah.
Now, at the beginning of this book, The Spirit of Music, it seems like the path that Victor Wooten, the man I'm talking to now, is on in life was a little bit off that path at the beginning of this book. You're coming back to your parents in Virginia after some time in Nashville. Your relationship with music is maybe more commercial and transactional than the way it was for you when you're in high school. I'm reading slightly between the lines, but this is what I'm gathering. Can you take me back to both that moment in the book, and if it relates to your life, I'd love to understand how you came to where you are now.
Sure. The one thing I would say to most people is don't worry about what in the book really happened, whether it really happened or not. You'll waste time.
Right.
Right. When I go watch Star Wars, I don't try to figure out if there's really a green man Yoda running around. I just learn the lessons. So even if I told you everything in the book happened verbatim, you weren't there. So to you, it's just a story that I'm telling. Treat it as a story that I'm telling and let the rest of it go. The lessons are real. The story may not be.
Right.
In many cases, there's a lot of truth in my life, but not in every case. Because I didn't grow up learning music the way most people do. Right? Because of that, I can't write the book 100% from my viewpoint, or else you wouldn't be able to relate. See, I really learned the same way you and your kids learn to speak English. Everyone you were born into the household, were speaking it. They were already good at it. But they didn't push you aside and say, no, you got to practice a few years before I'm going to speak to you. Right? When I was born, my brothers already knew I'm the bass player. They had it planned. So the same way you know that your baby girl who's just a year and a day old, right?
Yep.
She's going to grow up speaking English. You don't have to work hard at it. You just got to talk to her and let her participate. That's the way I learned to play music. When I was born, there was a little toy instrument waiting for me. My brothers were jamming the same way in English. Everybody in their house is jamming, improvising, making it up, right? And so you're allowed as a baby, as an infant, you're allowed to communicate too. I had that growing up in music. Knowing that not everybody had that, I couldn't write it from the truth of my standpoint, or else you wouldn't really get it. So a lot of the problems I may have had in the story, I may or maybe didn't have in real life. But understanding that a lot of people had these problems, I allowed my character to live your life for you.
Got you.
Now, it doesn't mean I didn't have these problems, but I may have had them in a different way. I may have had different problems, but I didn't want to just agree like the teacher, Michael, that's in the music lesson. You know, he's saying some outlandish things. I wrote these things. I probably believe them. But as the character in the book, I can't just believe everything. I need to push back, you know, so that the reader can get a further explanation. And I can speak for the reader in that sense.
I understand where you're coming from and figuring out how to create a narrative that might relate to the way a lot of us learned how to play music and might not relate to the way you did. Did you learn that from other writers? Did you learn that from being a musician? Where did you take sort of that intuition that you had to frame it that way from? Where did you get that?
As many places as I could. You know, from one of my favorite books is written by a guy named Richard Bach, right? Maybe his famous book was Jonathan Livingston Seagull. Beautiful book, but I like the book Illusions. And the book Illusions is about a teacher and a student, right? So that was one of the books that said, hey, don't write an instruction manual, the Wooten method. No, you'll have to defend that. You know, people will start arguing. Just write a story, right? We argue less over fiction. So just write a story, right? So that book Illusions gave me the idea of doing it that way. And a few other books also, Tom Brown Jr., a great naturalist, and some other things. But it was this one main guy. Rod Taylor is a longtime friend of mine. plays bass. But when he was teaching at Stanford, I would write a chapter of the music lesson. I would email it to him. He would print it out, read it, and mark it in red pen and send it back to me. And it was him that made me push back against Michael in the book a little more, because he's saying your character Michael is saying some kind of outlandish different things, and you're agreeing with him a little too easily, right? So he was one of the main guys that really said you need to push back a little more against him. Don't just accept what he says. Michael in the book, I can't remember if it was Michael or little Sam in the first book, who says one of these days you'll stop playing your bass. And I believe in the music lesson, 3 different people told my character that you got to stop playing the bass. And that's a really outlandish thing to say to a bass player.
Sure.
Right. But his point is, if you're playing the bass, you're probably not playing music. Right. And you might hear that, and that I shouldn't just say, oh, yeah, you're right. You got to ask about that. Wait a minute, what do you mean? But in the same sense as you don't say that you speak mouth, right? You don't name the instrument that you speak. It's a language. And you have an instrument. I have an instrument. We all have our own instrument. But who wants to hear the instrument? So when Michael says at some point you got to stop playing the bass, me personally, I get it right away. But I can't expect the reader to. So I push back a little bit.
Now, at a pretty important juncture in the book, a lot of specialists on particular instruments end up being shooken up. And I think you're holding a violin, somebody's playing a thumb piano.
Yes.
And you've already talked about this theoretical 10-year-old student who knows music, but he or she doesn't yet know the bass. And you're talking a little bit about, I guess, technical facility or facility on a particular instrument compared to feeling it as music and understanding it as language. Can you tell me about your journey there and how you see it playing out in the book as well?
Okay, so yeah. So in many cases, Sean, I take real stories and change them for the book.
Sure.
So in the early 80s, I'm in 11th grade, I think. My brothers and I get a big record deal, Arista Records. This producer's producing Whitney Houston's record. He's producing an early record on Kenny G before most people knew who he was. He was also producing a record on these 5 brothers called the Wooten brothers. That was my brothers and me. But our deal was kind of destined to fail. Sometimes big companies have to have write-offs. We didn't know that, but that record was never going to come out. But what ended up happening, it caused us 5 brothers for the first time in my life, in the early 80s to mid 80s, the 5 brothers weren't playing together exclusively as a band, which again, this is what I've been doing from birth. So it wasn't a great place in my life. All I knew was music. 2 of my brothers are now in New York touring and all that. 3 of us are home. What do I do? I'm a senior in high school now. I'm graduated and I'm living at home with my parents. They're nice enough to let me stay, but I'm not contributing. I need to do something. All I know is music. In Williamsburg, Virginia, close to where I was from, there's an amusement park called Busch Gardens. Right? I found out they needed a bluegrass fiddle player. I never played fiddle in my life. Violin. I did play cello throughout high school. Mm-hmm. So I asked my teacher, my orchestra teacher, can I borrow a violin? She says yes. So this is the days before the internet. I had to research the top fiddle tunes. And I found 3, Orange Blossom Special, Devil Went Down to Georgia, and the third one, I'm sorry, I can't remember. But within a week or so, I learned those songs. And I went in and I won the audition. So at Busch Gardens, I became a bluegrass fiddle player. Now, I borrowed this mentality from my brothers. Music is not an instrument, right? The same way your mouth can learn German. Through your mouth, you can learn any language you want. Well, instruments are just instruments. They don't make any music. Like you can't see in here. You can kind of see. If you notice, that ukulele doesn't make a sound until we touch it. So that lets us know the music, Sean's coming from us. We're musical. So life just put me in a situation, or I could even say music put me in a situation to say, okay, that's your philosophy. Prove it. Learn this instrument right away. And I said, okay. So for the next few years, I played bluegrass fiddle at Busch Gardens. Right? But the reason they even gave me the audition is because they needed an accordion player. My brother Joseph auditioned on a keyboard, turned on its side. He played Italian music. They said, man, you're amazing. If you can get an accordion, you got the gig. My parents found an accordion in the used paper. He bought the accordion on one day, went to the rehearsal on the next day. They were calling him the overnight accordion player. They needed a steel guitar player. Reggie said, this is just a guitar that I lay in my lap. I can do that. So Reggie plays a steel guitar. And Roy was playing snare drum in the German band. So by the time they said, Roy says, oh, I got a brother who can probably play fiddle. Right? They were listening by this time. So Roy calls me up, says, Victor, I may have a job for you. You think you can learn to play fiddle? I said, yeah. And then I got to prove it to myself also. So that's why I chose the fiddle for this part in the book. My friend Brandon, who is in the new book, is is inspired by a real friend of mine in Seattle, and he plays the kalimba, but he's done some ingenious things to it that I didn't get into the book because I don't want to spread it worldwide before he does. But he's done some amazing things on how to change the pitch on an instrument that doesn't change pitches. He can change it with a technique he uses. And then I grew up in Hawaii. That's where I first started playing music. So my older brother Reggie, one of his first instruments was ukulele. Gotcha. So that was in my early childhood. And then I happened to be really good friends with one of the best ukulele players in the world, Mr. Jake Shimabukuro. So there's a place where ukulele is played in a music store, and I had Jake come in for the audiobook and play that part. So if you get to the audiobook and you hear the most beautiful ukulele, you'll know that that's Jake Shimabukuro.
I wanted to impart something to you from what you were just talking about. Are you aware of the drummer who just passed away named Milford Graves?
Yes.
Okay. I had the opportunity to take one class with him when I was a student at Bennington College where he taught. I went there for 1 year, and he had, for whatever reason, the well-traveled man, he had never touched an electric bass before. And this is probably 99 or something like that. And he put it on his lap and looked at it for maybe, 15 seconds, 20 seconds, and then conjured sounds out of it that I had struggled to conjure. He saw the harmonics, maybe perhaps because the double dots, but he sort of said, okay, I get the layout of this thing, and touched a couple things and related to where the bridge was. And it did give me that sense that you get that affinity that's above an instrumental affinity. It's an affinity for music.
Nice, Sean. You just nailed one of my secret techniques, I guess you want to call it. When people are wondering where I get a lot of my craziness from, is when I meet a good musician, like what I first did with meeting Bela Fleck, right? If I meet a great musician who plays a different instrument than me, I hand them my instrument and ask them to play it as if it were theirs.
Yeah.
So a lot of my thumb technique is thumb and index finger, same 3 fingers Bela uses on the banjo, right? If I hand my bass to a bass player, in no disrespect, I pretty much know what's going to come out.
Sure.
It's going to come out with their voice, but we have a good idea. If I hand the bass to a saxophone player and say, play this like a saxophone, I have zero idea of what's going to come out. Zero. Right? You hand it to a drummer, zero idea. So I get to be surprised. And I've done that with people all around the world. All around the world. And then and every time I do it, I grow. Right? Like we think of saxophone as a vertical instrument.
Yeah.
But what does it look like if you just lay it on its side? Right? Looks just like a guitar. So all the instruments can relate to each other, but right? And the thing that makes them all relate is us and music.
I want to ask a fundamental question about the book, because I have another question that's sort of outside of the book. But in a nutshell, this journey, and for folks who haven't read the book, this seems like a group of like-minded souls, but not exactly the same type of people, coming together and discovering that they have a common mission, to protect music and maybe to listen to music in a different way and with a depth that might be lacking. That's if somebody was in an elevator and said, "Who are you talking to tonight?" "Oh, Victor Wooten. What's the book about?" That's what I'd say. What would you say the book is about when you're sort of trying to summarize it?
Very, very similar. A group of people coming together with the mission of saving music. Music as an entity says that she is sick and dying. And the book is actually a call to enlist the reader in the cause, to actually join the cause to help save music.
So you want a reader of this book to walk out and do what? Do what differently in their own path?
I The main thing would be this: feel music in a real way, right? Listen completely, right? Share as if as if as if you wanted to have a conversation with your mom. Would you rather listen through tiny earbuds over a little speaker, or would you like to be there and hug and feel the vibration and the breath? See, we used to listen to music that way, but we've forgotten. It's now a solo thing that we do by ourselves through tiny earbuds. So we've gone from this to this. And so it comes, for me, it's feeling the completeness again, the realness, the reality, where you can feel music on your skin, inside and out, but to have a real relationship with music.
That's not only inspiring, but for whatever reason, I know that there's a huge deficit of live music right now, but at least my reverence for the quality of what I'm listening to and my desire to get the things I love on vinyl and my desire to listen on quality speakers. I don't think I'm on an island alone in feeling like this pandemic has made me want to appreciate the finest things in life more finely, and with more reverence for what they're done.
Yes, and realizing what the finer things in life are.
Yes.
Like when we got on here earlier today, before the public was here, I saw you holding the finest thing in life there is.
Right.
It doesn't get any finer than that.
Yeah.
So the thing with that is to remember that. Even when your baby girl is, and I'm not really talking to you, but using it as an example, even when that baby girl is grown, married, has their own kid, right? You'll know that's still going to be your baby girl.
Yeah.
And you're going to be able to see her, feel her, and remember her the same way you were holding her at a year and a day old. That's never going to change, because the relationship of age, years between you and her, is never going to get any closer,
Yeah.
right? But with music, we've lost that. Okay. When we were little tiny kids and we heard our favorite song, we would dance. Didn't matter who was looking. We would sing. We would play air guitar. Or this, the same way you feel right now if you got in the mirror with no one looking, playing some air guitar to AC/DC, right? You're smiling just thinking about it.
Right.
But all of a sudden it becomes about what other people think about us. And we start distancing ourselves from the realness of what music is asking from us, or offering us, I should say. I want people to bring that back. And I can't really tell you how to do it. And really the book does raise some points, but it really asks more questions than it does.
Sure.
But I want people to really feel, and if you can feel in groups the way we used to, even better.
Now, how do you stay calibrated with that spirit when I bet things sneak into your brain the same way they do to mine? How much am I getting paid for this? When when do I got to pick up my kids? What key is this song in? The distractions from hearing it as a spirit, and how do you quiet that, and how do you calibrate yourself for the way you want to see the whole world act?
Well, one of the ways is the fact that I get to do it for people a lot. Right? I'm in front of people, of course, except for this past year.
Sure.
I'm in front of people playing music more than I'm playing by myself. So in other words, I enjoy every time I play. But what you enjoy is always more enjoyable in a group of people who also enjoy it.
Right.
That's why people like going to concerts with a big crowd of people rather than seeing your favorite band by yourself. You'd rather enjoy it with people. So when I get to do that every night I get to enjoy that. And I'm not a musician who separates himself from the audience. I'm not over worried about what they think about me. So I'm not going to show my whole self. I'm going to keep this barrier between. No, I'm with you. I'm an audience member also. If I'm playing with Bela and Bela plays something amazing, I'm excited, just as excited as you. I might be just as excited if I myself play something wonderful, but it's for me, it's the share. One of the things that keeps me in that mindset is the sharing of it with people. Right, Sean, when we were young and we bought a vinyl record, we didn't just sit and listen to it by ourselves. Friends, family, we all listened to it. Both sides from beginning to end. We passed around the album cover and read the credits. Nowadays, you ask a kid, when's the last complete record they bought and listened to? Don't buy records anymore. And I don't even mean vinyl. I just mean even if you got it off of iTunes, they buy singles.
Yeah.
Listen to the songs out of order, but claim they heard the whole record. That's the same as downloading your favorite scenes from a movie, watching those few scenes out of order, but say that you saw the movie. So you're an artist, we have a vision when we make records.
Yeah.
It takes a long time just to figure out which song is going to come second. Song titles, the mix, the order, and then that whole vision gets lost on the listener. But the interesting thing is that live, it doesn't usually get lost.
Right.
And I love that. So it's that live thing that keeps me strong.
And that's, again, sort of, if you press pause on the pandemic, the music industry is headed towards a lot of the economy of it is in the live thing. And that does make me feel like the artistry and some of what you seem to be talking about in your book seems more plausible than maybe it did even 10 years ago. That because there's such an investment in live music, we might see some of those things. And I'll bring up the first time I saw you live, I knew your name because I was a bass player, but I had not checked out your music. Probably talking 95. You might know better. You and Future Man opening up for Bradesky, Martin and Wood at Iron House Music Hall.
Okay.
So,
oh my goodness. I got a story for you. It wasn't Future Man. Okay.
Oh, my bad.
It wasn't my brother. It was another guy named J.D. Blair.
Okay.
That was the first show we ever did as a duo. So that was the very first show of my solo touring career.
Oh, wow. I was there at the beginning.
The very first. I'm going to make this story short. We drove J.D. Blair, one of my all-time favorite drummers, him and me. I had put out this record, A Show of Hands, solo bass, except JD's voice. He says, "Yo, Victor," that's JD. But live, we go out as a duo. I've been touring with the Flecktones for a while. So I say, hey, let's do a tour. First gig, my sound guy, Kurt Story, who also is the same guy, Kurt, who introduced me to Bela Fleck. We drive all the way from Nashville to the Iron Horse, Nashville, Tennessee, to the Iron Horse, straight there, only to be told that the early show, there was another jazz pianist or something that had played that night, that show went late. So the people waiting to get in to see Medeski, Martin, and Wood were going to get in late, and we weren't going to get to play. So basically, I told that guy, I said, we are playing tonight. We just drove from Nashville. I recognize a lot of this audience. This is a Flecktones audience and a Medeski Martin Wood. They want to see what I'm going to do. We're going to play tonight. So he says, okay, I'm going to give you 15 minutes. So JD and I look at each other and we say, okay, for 15 minutes, we're going to tear the roof off this place.
Yeah, and you did.
It was a good night. It was a great night. But after that gig, when my sound guy, who was also my tour manager, came over with $25, and it was either $15 or $25, and he says, do you want to keep this or do you want me to keep it? And I was like, what? Well, what is that? Is that like so we can go get food? He's like, no, that's what we made tonight. I got so mad. I called the manager, who happened to be the Flecktones manager, and that was the day that I realized, Victor Wooten, you don't know anything about the business. You just want to play. The only person you can be mad at is yourself. You drove all the way up here and didn't know what the deal was. So from that point on, I started paying attention. Yeah. That's a special night. I still share stories about that night. Yeah.
What a trip. And, to be probably ninth grade when you're doing that, all I'm seeing is a world-class bass player you involved so much humor and energy in what you two were doing. There was it's easy to blow off a great opening act because you're excited to hear the Medeski Martin Wood song and you got their record and all that. But I couldn't take my eyes off of you two, and you were having fun, and I guess to know that it was your first gig doing that boggles my mind, because you had obviously had a relationship with JD Blair, but I thought the man was your brother. You know what I mean? There was so much chemistry there.
So much. He might as well be my brother. He actually went to college for a year, I think, with my older brothers.
Gotcha.
But he's one of my all-time favorite drummers. If I had to name 5 drummers for my whole awareness of who are my favorite, he's definitely in there. And my brother Future Man, of course, would be in there too.
Now, pretty soon we'll chat with Eric and we'll take some questions from the audience. But I wanted to just make sure that we are understanding as much as we can about the book, especially for folks who have not read it yet and want to check it out. I learned a lot from it, and I really thought it was an interesting perspective on music. And I just want to make sure I want to give you close to an open opportunity to explain your experience with writing the book and share with people how, what they
Sure. The idea from the book, about the book, I call the chapters measures. The intro of the book, I think the first chapter is called The Prelude or something like that. But what I do is the first opening of the book is straight from me, the author. Then the story starts, and the story of the Spirit of Music starts right where the first book, The Music Lesson, ended. That's where it starts. But the thought is this, and this to me is real. This is not fiction. If you think of listening to live music as a foot, 12 inches, okay, listening to vinyl might be 8 inches. Actually, live's bigger than that, but I just made it a foot to make it make sense. A foot down to 8 inches to a vinyl record. A CD is made up of waveforms. Okay, vinyl's analog. When we talk, right now we're digital, but when we talking to each other, it's analog. That's why we feel each other more. Analog's different, right? CD gets down to about 6 inches, made of waveforms. An MP3, which is a standard of today, an MP3 is only 1/10 the size of a waveform. So if a CD, a waveform is 6 inches, MP3 starts out at 0.6 inches, half an inch. Now put that through tiny earbuds or a computer speaker, we may be down to 1/4 of an inch. Add the fact that everything on the radio these days, currently, the current music is pitch corrected, meaning we're not getting all the pitches. It's also quantized. Quantized is the same as pitch correction, but it's done to rhythms. If the rhythm's slightly off, it fixes it. So we're not getting all the rhythms. Everything's also compressed. That's why you barely hear any soft music on the radio, because it takes all the dynamics and puts it here. So we're not getting all the dynamics. We're not getting all the rhythms. We're not getting all the pitches, and we're definitely not getting all the frequencies. So I asked the question in the opening part of the book. You think about a human body that gets sick. Your human body doesn't have to have illness all over for the whole body to die. You just have to have enough illness in one part of the body for the whole body to die. So again, I like to ask questions rather than to tell you what to think. Then I ask the question, how much of music has to get sick for all of music to die? And now that you are thinking about it, if this is really happening, are you willing to do anything about it? So I leave you there, and then we start the story. So you're reading the story with that in mind. But then you're meeting three other people. My character, Victor, Ali from Africa, Seiko from Japan, who are feeling the same thing. And for some reason, we just happened to meet. How did we meet? Maybe music brought us together? I don't know. Another question. What are we going to do? I don't know. And who's killing music, right? And we find out that every time music disappears, there's these people there. We find out their names are the phasers, because they can put music out of phase and music disappears. So anyway, that's the basis of the story. And they're headed back to Nashville. For some reason, all these characters were headed to Nashville, and they wind up in a car together, headed to Nashville, not knowing what they're going to do, just knowing what they have to do, which is to save music. And so that's the gist of the book. That's the main thing. But I'm telling all the readers the main point is to bring you into our team.
Yeah.
To help save music, to help do something.
Well, Victor, I love it, and I think it's time to field a couple questions from the audience. And thank you for this conversation. I just feel very warm inside connecting with you. So,
thank you. I appreciate it, Sean.
No doubt. We're all feeling pretty warm out here as well. So thank you both, man. This is awesome. We do have some great audience questions, I think. So I'm going to jump right in. And the first of these you guys touched on, but I'll be interested in if there's any expanding you want to do. And it does deal with this time of the pandemic, the pressure we're all under, the restrictions, the inability to get together and enjoy music, live music together. Do you have any suggestions for strategies to resist, being dispirited about that? Strategies to save music and save ourselves with music?
Sure. Make ourselves better. This is our time to really focus on the things about ourselves we need to improve, because we're going to be together again, right? But this pandemic, there is offering us a lot. There's a lot of opportunity here. And I don't want to risk missing the opportunity wishing I was somewhere else. So sink your feet solid into where we are. And here's one thing you can do. Take out a piece of paper, right? Do it once we get off, take out a piece of paper and write down all the things that you are doing differently because of the pandemic. Write them all down. Don't judge them. Just write them down. Maybe I'm, on Facebook more. Don't say too much. Just say more. Don't judge them yet. I'm on Facebook. Maybe I'm taking more walks with my wife. Maybe I'm cooking with my dad. Maybe I'm exercising more. Maybe I'm sleeping more. Whatever. Write them all down. Then go through the list and put a check mark by the things you want to continue once the pandemic's over. Well, I want to keep exercising. I want to keep making home meals. For me, I want to not tour as much as I was. I want to spend more time with my kids, my wife, So put a check mark by all the things you want to continue doing and then continue doing them. Don't wait till the pandemic's over. Make them a habit. So they are no longer what you do, they become who you are. Then once the pandemic is over, you are better. And then at that point, there is no way that you are going to return to normal, because returning to normal is not what we want. Normal got us here.
Yeah.
We need to return better than normal, but it starts with you. So here's our chance. If you want to jam with people, be better the next time you jam with people. If you know you're not a good music reader, you got nothing but time to work on it. Right? So let's work on all these things that we've been sweeping under the rug. Let's get up every morning and make your bed. You've got time to do it. You have nowhere to be. Make your bed. Make a habit of being successful. The first thing you do when you get up, you become successful. And now being successful is my habit. Right? So the next time we shake hands, I say, whoa, Eric, something's different. And you go, right. That's what we want. And this is the opportunity we have.
Right on, man. That's awesome. And thank you for making that concrete and practical. That was really good. And just to pick up on your comment about taking walks and being out in nature, you are known as a naturalist. And so someone out there is asking, how does that tie into music? How does being in nature and ecology and that mindset tie into being a musician?
Right. If you find someone, let's say you have a 3-year-old daughter, Sean, and your daughter just gets behind you, picks up your bass. It's laying on your bed. She gets on it and makes a pretty good sound. What are you going to say? Wow, you're a natural. What does that really mean? Look up the word natural. You'll find out it means to be like nature, having the characteristics of nature. So what you're really saying, Sean, is, wow, you're like nature, right? A bird doesn't have to practice singing. A beaver's born knowing how to chew down a tree. A squirrel just knows how to make a nest, right? We have these natural abilities also. And when we recognize them in people, we call them nature. We say, you're like nature. You're a natural. So if you look up the word natural in the dictionary, you'll see it means to be like nature. But on a third definition, it'll say without sharps and without flats. So even the dictionary makes the connection.
Wow.
But our goal in life is to be like nature. But we're told to lock ourselves away from nature in a room and practice. I'll tell you this, you don't become natural at anything locked in a room. Right? Imagine your daughter's locked in a room learning to speak English.
Wow.
Right? You got to get out of that room. You get into the room a little bit, practice a little bit, but you got to get out in nature to become natural. That's something that I started learning in the early 90s. Hadn't thought about it until I literally started studying nature, studying how to live off the land, how to rub sticks together and make fires, how to track animals, all the things that our ancestors had to know for us to still be here today. But you want to talk about something dying. I'm using music. We already know that nature's dying. Right? That's an old story. Right? The fact that music is dying hopefully will point people back even towards nature. That's why there's always a lot of nature in the books. Right? But I'm not fearful. I'm not fearful about it because nature's going to win. Right? We're not going to win over nature as we see right now. Yeah.
Exactly. I'm going to throw you one that I'm not sure anybody can answer, but I'm going to enjoy hearing you try.
Yes.
How do you keep ego out of the way of music? How do you keep it out of the way?
Okay. I just told you to look up the word nature. Next, look up the word ego. And you'll find out if you look at the true meaning of ego, you never want to get rid of it. Look it up. Everyone, write that down on the piece of paper I asked you to get out. Next thing you're going to do is look up the word ego. The true meaning of the word ego is a sense of self. It means to know who you are. Why would you ever want to stop doing that? Now, when who I am becomes better than who you are, now maybe I've crossed the line. But that's the small part of ego.
Mm.
It's this thing I said earlier. If I go to the doctor, I want that doctor to have a strong ego. Meaning I want that doctor to know who he or she is and know their ability. I don't want them questioning it. If I go to a car mechanic, if I call a plumber, they better have some ego. Now, again, the part of the ego that says, oh, I'm the best plumber in the world. That guy down the town, you know, Joe up the street, he's so no good. I don't need that part of the ego. I just want the lets me know you know who you are. That's what ego is. So when people say leave your ego out the door, you called me because I know who I am. That's why you called me. You don't want me to leave that outside. I'm bringing all the ego I got. I know I'm good. Right? I know that. I don't question that. That's not bragging. It's the truth. But you're good too. And I'm not good enough to be you, but my ego's intact.
Yeah.
Right? But I say this strongly and confidently because from day one, my mom and dad were teaching us this.
Mm-hmm.
My dad and mom made sure that we knew who we were. They knew what 5 black kids were growing up facing in the 50s and 60s. Right? But it wasn't us against them or against anybody. It was us. If we were against anyone, it's ourselves. It was just knowing who we are in a world that may not support who you are. Right?
Yeah.
Then you've got to know. And that's why I can say it strongly, because I was lucky enough to grow up in a family that didn't really preach that, because, you know, a lot of times we preach things we're not really sure about. This was just the way it was. Right? We needed to know, and we know that. And I want other people to know. I want you to have an ego. But we've misinterpreted what ego is. We've done the same with the word fear. I won't go into it and take your time. But fear is something you never want to get rid of. Right? Fear is your warning signal that something bad might happen. And the fact that you're fearful means it hadn't happened yet.
Yeah. Well, Victor, I want to thank you. You have brought such a deep personhood to your work and to this conversation. Sean, thank you for drawing all this out and putting it in this beautiful frame for us. I know I'm not the only person who's going to listen to a record or two tonight with some new ears and new hope in my soul. Everyone out there, be well, read a good book, and good night.
Thank you.